Jai Sriman Narayan. Jai Sriman Narayan. Jai Sriman Narayan. I pay my obeisances to my spiritual master, Srimad Jagadguru Sudarshan Acharya Ji Maharaj. I pay my obeisances to Lord Sri Ramanuj. I pay my obeisances to our Purva Acharyas. I pay my obeisances to our 12 Alvars. I pay my obeisances to Mother Lakshmi. And I pay my obeisances to Lord Sriman Narayan. I welcome all of you here physically at the Sri Narayana Dham in Durban, South Africa. I welcome all those that's watching this discourse locally, nationally, and internationally. And I welcome in advance those that's going to be watching this discourse when it is posted on YouTube and the various groups from around the world subsequently. A special welcome, Amita, you can turn your camera, to Professor Motsheka, the chairperson of the South African Interfaith Council, and also the chairperson of the committee that represents interfaith in the presidency. Professor Motsheka wears many caps, but he could not bring all his caps on his flight down to Durban. He said, I must just use these two caps in context of the reason for him being here in Durban today. So, Prof, on behalf of the Sri Narayana Dham, we welcome you warmly. We take into cognizance that at your age, you are still an activist, you are still in the trenches, working tirelessly, and you'll put to shame many young people in your efforts to realize a prosperous South Africa, but not only a prosperous South Africa, a divine world. And we want to acknowledge your efforts that you have taken since inception. For those of you that do not know, the professor is involved in interfaith for the past 30 years. And he was with former President Nelson Mandela when this concept gave birth of interfaith. And he carried the baton through thick and thin, through turmoil. Politics is not an easy game, and interfaith and politics, when mixed, can be very successful or very disastrous, and a whole lot of politicians won't embrace interfaith freely. But Professor Motsheka has withstood every storm that came his way, and through the grace of God, he landed at the ashram in May this year, and today I am happy to inform you that the professor has appointed me as the national coordinator of the South African Interfaith Council. This council has been endorsed in government by former President Jacob Zuma himself. So this council has been in existence and active since 2009. And our work is what we are doing today. Today our work is international, but as we move along, our work is going to also be localized. Our intention is to bring prosperity to South Africa, to every citizen of South Africa. Our intention as the interfaith is to bring prosperity to all South African citizens across the board. But today I quickly want to discuss the atrocities in Palestine, and I want to do it like I normally do when I give discourses. I use evidence and I break it down into its simplest components so that you can understand when you leave this ashram that the decision the ashram has taken is endorsed legally, constitutionally, and by the Supreme Lord himself. So I don't go willy-nilly for fame. I don't jump on bandwagons. I have taken a stance almost alone as a Hindu. I'm the only Hindu spiritual leader that has taken this stance. And I'll explain at the rally through scripture why I am involved. So I just want to give you a brief history of the land mass which is now called Palestine. That demarcation, which is currently both Palestine and Israel, I want to give a history. So 4,000 years there were people living in that landmass. 4,000 years ago there were humans living in that landmass. Then Judaism was born, and some of the people in that landmass were converted to Judaism, others lived their original lives. Then 2,000 years ago, Christianity was born. People in that landmass some of them were converted to Christianity, others lived as Jews, and others lived as they were living originally. And 1,400 years ago, Islam was born. So some people in that landmass was converted to Islam, others remained Jews, others remained Christian, others remained Jews, and others remained as they originally remained. All of you understand? Same landmass I'm talking about, which is called Palestine and Israel today. So from 3,000 years ago, up until the 18th, 19th century, there were multiple invasions. There were multiple invasions starting from the Assyrians and culminating with the Ottomans. I want you to understand, during the Ottoman Empire, in the early 1900s, during the Ottoman Empire, Jews, Muslims and Christians lived peacefully side by side in this land, and those who were non-Christian, non-Jews and non-Muslims, everyone lived peacefully side by side. So this is right up until the 1900s, then a journalist created an organization called Zionism. At this point in time, there was anti-Semitism, that means anti-Jews around the world. But I'm talking about in the early 1900s, just before World War I. When was World War I? Sorry? 1914. So just before World War I. And he came down and he tried to meet the head of the Ottoman Empire. He wanted to pay. So countries normally owe the World Bank money, so he wanted to pay the debt of the Ottoman Empire to the World Bank, and he wanted the Ottoman Empire to cede that land that is currently Palestine and Israel today to him. But unfortunately, the leader of the Ottoman Empire, I'm not going into names now, I want to run through, declined. Then the Zionists had a plan B. They started buying land in this territory called Palestine. They started buying land, one farm at a time, and they continued to buy and accumulated all the farms, and they created a city. They removed all the Arabs and they brought in their own people, and that is how the Zionists invaded the land of Palestine. Does it sound similar? Did it happen here in South Africa?
Yes.
Original landowners taken apart, thrown away from the original places, and this thugs. Anybody who takes a property of another person, what is the colloquial definition of that person? Thief and a thug. Yes? In our English language, you call him a thief. So these thieves and thugs, it's not a natural happening. There's a lot of planning behind these things. You understand? Because initially Uganda was offered to the Jews, which they refused. Initially Uganda and Argentina was offered to the Jews and they refused. They wanted to stay. So I'm using the wrong word, forgive me. I should be using, and you as well. Any time when you refer to Israel, it is the Zionist thug, thieves that we are referring to, and not the Jews, not the bona fide Jews. The bona fide peace-loving Jews who follow the Torah, and in the Torah there are not only 10 commandments, there are 162 commandments that a bona fide Jew follows. And I'm talking about those Jews, they themselves condemn the thugs and the Zionists. So I've had meetings with Jewish leaders. I've had meetings, I've researched through evidence. What I am discussing here is evidence. Currently at this point in time, you are watching relentless bombings, aren't you? You're watching relentless bombings. I think in 2010, America assisted Israel in creating the Dome. You all heard of the Dome? Have you all heard of the Dome? The Dome is technology that you cannot penetrate with missiles. And America donated over 10 billion to get this technology into place. This technology is so powerful that even a mosquito cannot penetrate it without warning the Israeli government. And Professor has been to Palestine. He's going to give his speech at the rally in 2003, and he will further verify what I am saying. Israel cannot be penetrated. October 7th was an inside job. October 7th was an inside job. If a mosquito cannot penetrate Israel, how can an army from Hamas attack through these domes? There's technology there. You cannot enter an entire army. And reports have come through that show that it was Israeli helicopters that were killing the Israelis. And it makes sense. And it makes sense because these Zionist criminals, they are criminals, and they don't care whether it's a Jewish life or whether it's an Islamic life or whether it's a Christian life. I was informed at a meeting that I was invited to by the KZN Christian Council. And we had speakers. We had a Christian speaker from Palestine, and he stated that all the Christian denominations of churches exist in Palestine. All the Christian denomination churches exist in Palestine. But for years, through the machinery of the mainstream media, which is controlled and governed by these thugs, we have been brainwashed into believing that Palestinians are Islamic terrorists. Yes or no? Whenever, up until this event or this atrocity of October 7th, when the word Palestine came in your mind, what picture was conjured immediately into your mind? Muslim terrorist. Palestine, Muslim terrorist. Because the Palestinians did not or do not have the capacity to defend this became a norm around the world. Palestine, Muslim terrorist. Yes or no? It is now that we are seeing how subjugated these people are, what the conditions are, what atrocities they suffer. It is only been shown to the world now. And now we have a evidence through fact-checking because of social media that Palestine and Palestinians and Islamic terrorists are different entities. These are women and children and elderly men who are not actively resisting the attacks from Israel that are being butchered as I am given, or as we are seated here today. That ceasefire is of no use. Because the atrocities are continuing on the sidelines. Have you seen the news? You understand? So we, as an ashram, we members of human society, we as human beings, can you sit and do nothing? Because we have the information. Earlier on, we said, don't worry, it's terrorists that's been killed by the Israelis. It's a good thing. Yes, we looked at it that way, that terrorists were being exterminated in Palestine. But now that we know the truth, what is our duty as human beings? Remember, these atrocities that is being played out in Palestine is nothing compared to what we suffered in South Africa. And we suffered in South Africa. But it's a small percentage if you have to compare the atrocities in Palestine. Women and children are being butchered on a daily basis. So this is the reason why the Sri Narayana Dham, without fear or favor, some people are saying that I always advertise our credentials and it is egotistical. But we have to advertise what we do. It is natural. It is natural that we advertise our credentials so that we can take a formal, active role to save humanity. You think this march today is superficial, or do you think this march today is going to be one of the factors that's going to liberate the suffering of these people permanently? Do you know how many marches took place around the world before South Africa was liberated? Do you know it was the world awareness which was one of the factors that you are seated here today with all human rights and dignity bestowed upon you? It was other people that were going into the trenches, that were marching, that were activating awareness for the South African apartheid government. Do you know that? And today you are liberated. Don't you think it is your duty today to reciprocate that, because your freedom was dependent on outsiders? And today, our action that we take will liberate Palestine. I strongly condemn all the political parties that are in South Africa that has backed Israel openly. I condemn, and I'm going to give you a reason why. Our apartheid government, the South African National Party, and the Zionist government of today and of yesteryear, were in cahoots with each other. Were in cahoots with each other. Both mafia states, yes or no? When Israel created a nuclear bomb, up until today it has not declared that it is a nuclear power. Do you know that? But when they created the nuclear bomb, they brought it to South Africa to have it tested. Where? And who caught them? The CIA. Now look at the collusion of the South African apartheid government with the Israeli apartheid government. Can you vote for a political party that is endorsing the same atrocities that we suffered here in South Africa ourselves? And the evidence is there that there was a collusion. And I'm not talking about business collusions, all the weapons that the South African government received from Israel and to fight the resistance movement here, all the expertise, all the intelligence that Israel supported our apartheid government. If these two governments were in bed, and we have 8 political parties openly supporting Israel, you think as a South African, and I'm not talking about these, those that were born, I'm not talking about Tiveshni's generation, TikTok generation, I'm talking about pre-1994, who suffered the atrocities in apartheid, during apartheid. You think you can put your cross next to a political party in South Africa that is supporting our suffering in another country today? You understand? All of you understand? Is it clear to you? You know I was involved in another political party. I was involved at its launch. I loved that leader, but unfortunately they are backing criminals, murderers. Anyone back in Israel is backing criminals, murderers, torturers. There is no greater human atrocity committed anywhere than what the Israelis are committing in this 21st century in front of our eyes. When we grew up, we heard Hitler did that, and that person did that, and that person did that. It was only a story. It was. Today we can see what is happening in Palestine. Can't we see it? Who can lie to us? The mainstream media cannot capture our minds anymore and brainwash it into a fake narrative. We have capacity to see in reality what is happening in Palestine today. So have I justified my reason to get you involved as my devotees to take part in this march today? in this blistering heat, so that our efforts here in South Africa can make an impact, make a tangible impact in Palestine. All of you understand? So we are condemning the Zionist government. We're not condemning Jews who follow the 162 commandments of the Torah. And they are in the majority. They are in the majority. Are there any questions? So I'm going to end off this session. There won't be Aarti. We're going to have a meal quickly. And we need to head in a convoy to the Chatsworth Oval. Are there any questions? Prof, you want to say a few things? We'll adjust. You can come through.
Say that as a congregation, we must be very, very grateful to you for giving us the history of this conflict, because for many decades we were misled into believing that the Palestinians are the aggressors. They are the terrorists, whereas the Palestinian People's Organization and now Hamas have been fighting against Western imperialism and colonialism, and the Israelites used God's name in vain and said that God gave them the authority to invade Palestine and to violently take away the land of the Palestinians and its natural resources for their own benefit. They did this falsely in the name of God. The European imperialists supported the Zionists because they themselves committed ethnic cleansing in North and South America, in Australia and New Zealand, also using the name of God. So, Guru, we should agree with you that we must draw a distinction between these Zionist liars and robbers, backed by their imperialist Western powers, and the Jews that adhere to the Torah, because these are not the same people. But the Zionist robbers created a story around anti-Semitism. They threatened us by saying, if you disagree with them, it means you are anti-Semites. But there's no one who's anti-Semites. We are against the criminal work of these Zionist robbers. I wish that this explanation that you gave today will go out there in the world so that everybody must understand what we're dealing with. Because you are right, Guru, that the war crimes that are committed in Palestine and the genocide that is committed in Palestine is the work of the devil, not the work of God. But because we have been told that these are the chosen nation by God, which is also a blue line. We are afraid to condemn them. We think if you condemn them, you are condemning the chosen people of God, and there's nothing like that. What the Zionists are doing in Palestine must receive condemnation from all of us. And I hope that South Africans, especially the Christian majority in this country, will understand this message. Because now they are afraid, they are sitting back, they feel if they raise their voice, they will be offending God, which is not the case. So I hope what your initiative, Guru, as the leader of the ashram and also as the national coordinator of the South African Interfaith Council, will plant a seed in this country for us to begin to search for the truth and not take things at face value. And I hope that the initiative to call for a national interfaith dialogue during this month will come to fruition, because this is a new struggle that people of faith must be involved in, because the ethnic cleansing that is taking place in Palestine is not going to end there. For instance, in South Africa, they want our minerals, they want our natural resources, but our people are awake now. They will not allow that. So they will create other reasons for cleansing us so that they can take this country and its resources. So unless we stand up now and follow your example, we will reap the fruits of our inaction. So Guru, I wish to thank you very much for enlightening us, and thank the congregation for supporting the direction that you are giving us. And I hope that all of us will participate in the march this afternoon to really raise the awareness of all our people, to make sure that we defend our rights for today and tomorrow. And I want to thank you and wish you well in this leadership position.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. We started our Oneness campaign 3 years ago, and when I started it, it was an empty vessel. There were many that thought I was in a dream world. Today, the ashram has landed at national level, recognized in the office of the presidency through Professor Motsheka, and in just 3 years, our interfaith is not only national, we're dealing with international issues. So when you put God first, the word impossible does not exist. Jai Sri Narayana.